The next point of education to review is closeouts on jump shots. Here, we will see an example of a reckless closeout that results in a flagrant foul, penalty 1. The defensive player, Alex Lynn, was correctly assessed a flagrant foul, penalty 1, for his reckless closeout on the shot attempt by the offensive player, Andrew Wiggins. Lynn closed out from distance, and he did not provide space for Wiggins to safely return to the floor. As the closeout was reckless, and the shooter landed on the foot of the defender, there is clear potential for injury, and this was correctly ruled a flagrant foul, penalty 1. On this next play, we will again see illegal contact on a closeout, but the correct ruling here will be a defensive foul and not a flagrant foul. The defensive player, Bojan Bogdanovic, closes out to the shooter, DeMar DeRozan, but the closeout is not reckless, and the offensive shooter does not land on the foot of the defender. Please note that this is a defensive foul, as Bogdanovic did not allow DeRozan the opportunity to return to a normal playing position, but it is not a flagrant foul. Another example of a defensive foul on a closeout that would not be considered a flagrant foul can be seen here. The defensive player, Luguentz Dort, challenges the shot by the offensive player, Jalen Brunson. But we can see that Dort is not reckless in his closeout, and while Brunson does land on the foot of Dort, it is due to the natural forward drift of the shooter as opposed to a reckless closeout by the defender. Again, this is a defensive foul, but it is not a flagrant foul. Let's review one more example of a defensive foul on a closeout. We see the highlighted defensive player, James Harden, close out toward the shooter, Max Strus. But the closeout by Harden is not reckless, and the subsequent contact made by Harden is to the leg of the shooter and is not an undercut. To be clear, this is still a defensive foul for this leg-to-leg contact, but it is not a flagrant foul. Now let's look at an example of a legal closeout by a defensive player. Here, the defensive player, Trey Lyles, closes out on a three-point attempt by the shooter, Cam Thomas. But Lyles jumps to the side of Thomas, avoiding any contact and staying out of the shooter's landing space as well. This play was correctly deemed to be a no call, as the incidental contact on the play was initiated by Thomas as he extended his leg slightly to the side. The final play in this section is another example of a legal closeout by a defensive player. The defensive player, De'Aaron Fox, closes out on a three-point attempt by the shooter, Luguentz Dort, but Fox jumps to the side of the offensive player, avoiding any contact and also staying out of the shooter's landing space. This play was correctly deemed to be a no call, as this is a legal closeout by the defensive player. The final point of education to review is flopping. On this first example, the highlighted defender, Toumani Camara, is defending the dribbler, James Harden, but following minimal contact with Harden, Camara launched himself backwards while also throwing his arms up in an exaggerated and theatrical manner that was inconsistent with the nature of the contact. A flopping violation was correctly called here, and a non-unsportsmanlike technical foul was assessed. Watch the contact on this next play closely. The highlighted offensive player, Grant Williams, attempts to move toward his teammate, who is inbounding the ball. But there is then marginal contact between Williams and the defensive player, George Niang. Williams reacts to this marginal contact by falling to the floor in an exaggerated and theatrical manner that was inconsistent with the contact on the play. A flopping violation was correctly called here, and a non-unsportsmanlike technical foul was assessed. The next play in this section will show an example of a flopping violation that was assessed post-game, but one that should have been called during the game. The highlighted offensive player, R.J. Barrett, reacts to marginal contact by his opponent, Jordan Clarkson, by leaping into the air and extending his arms out in a theatrical manner. Barrett's reaction was exaggerated and was inconsistent with the contact that occurred on the play. A flopping violation should have been called on this play, and a non-unsportsmanlike technical foul needed to be assessed. We will finish the video with an example where a flopping penalty would not be assessed. Here, the highlighted offensive player, Jeremy Grant, attempts a three-point field goal, and the defensive player, Miles Bridges, challenges the shot. After the shot is released, Grant sits down in a reflexive action, but his reaction is not exaggerated, nor is it theatrical, and therefore no flopping penalty was needed nor assessed here.